Hello there, welcome back to the channel. It's really great to see you here. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about mixing with EQ. Now, not the best settings or anything like that or how the parameters work, but more about the actual application of it. How to decide how much to cut or boost of a particular frequency. How to decide which frequency to go to first, that kind of thing. This all comes down to things like your critical listening skills and your experience. And what I want to try and do in this video is, if you're not that experienced, is try and give you a little really simple framework to use to be able to make those decisions. So if you struggle with this, if you feel like you're guessing every time you open up an EQ plugin, and you just go dive in straight, you go straight in and you boost and you sweep around looking for some sort of divine intervention or something, then I really hope this video, I really think this video will help you out and just give you some more tool or a tool to mix using EQ with more intention. Don't be disheartened though, this is really common, and that's really what's prompted this video, is that I do see this an awful lot where people just go straight in with EQ, sweeping around, and all that this ends up doing, if you're not sure what it is you're looking for, is you end up with sounds that are over-processed, and you just end up losing perspective with the whole thing. So today I want to show you how I make my EQing decisions. And I think I've got a method that I believe will help you trust your ears, and it will stop this overthinking. And this one shift, I think, can totally change your whole EQ workflow. And you'll develop a deeper understanding of how to mix. So this is what I see people doing all the time. They'll put an EQ on something, and they just immediately start to kind of go in like this and start sweeping around for things. And the problem with that is that everything just sounds unnatural, doesn't sound like the original source anymore. And when you're using tight cues like this on things, everything seems to whistle. So I just think that's probably not a great approach for someone who's just starting out mixing. The problem is with that, there's no intention. There's no pause for thought, and that's what I want to show you today, is that all-important listening first. Listen to what the source is telling you, listen to it in the context of the mix, and then decide what you need to do to it. You don't even need to go to the exact frequency, okay? You just have to just make your best guess at where you think a boost or a cut might help you get to that sound that's in your head. If you jump in too fast like this is where you get unprocessed sounds, and it just, you end up then going off down rabbit holes you needn't go down, because basically you've ruined the sound within the first instant of listening to it, without giving it that proper thought and respect, if you like, that it deserves. Let me show you what I mean on this acoustic guitar. Let me just centre that up for you. And I just see people doing this all the time. And that's so unnatural. I mean, that just sounds like an effect, really. And even worse, when you go in with tighter cues, looking to notch out at frequencies, which is a very valid approach. I'm not knocking that, but it's not my first go-to. That's kind of like the last approach I take, is if after repeated listenings and going through a mix, there's just this repeated annoying frequency that is just bugging me, then I'll go in and look for it with a notch and try and fix it. Certainly don't go hunting around for them. If I don't hear a problem, I'm not going to go looking for it. This is your typical notch. I mean, how do you make a decision when you hear that? What I think is the most valid thing, or the most important thing to do, is to actually listen to the source and decide what you want to do first. And let me show you how to go about doing that. So we're going to work with this acoustic guitar in this mix. I want to pan it back to where it was. Let me actually bring back all my processing. Let's just listen to that transition where the acoustic guitar is introduced into the arrangement. Okay, so you could quite clearly hear that entering into the arrangement. But let's start mixing this. Let's mix this acoustic into this mix, starting from scratch. So I'm going to bypass everything that I've done and start to bring things in. So let's listen to this acoustic without any processing across that transition. You still hear it, it's still there. It's not as prominent and it's pushed back. It's a little bit further back in the arrangement. But I know that the level of that acoustic, the fader balance, the position is right. I can hear it, it's loud enough. It's just that the enhancement that it needs now needs to come from EQ, because in the arrangement for my how it sounds to me in my head, that needs to be just a little bit brighter, in order to balance with the tonality of the guitar that's on the right-hand side, the electric. Let's take a listen to that. Okay, so it's about balance for me and frequency balance. So that's how I'm making this decision. So that's the first thing. What does this acoustic guitar need? And that's the first question to ask yourself when listening to a source. What do I like about it? What don't I like about it? What processing do I need to do to it to get it closer to how I want it to sound in my head? And, how should it sit in the mix? Another important question, very important question, is what's its role in the arrangement? Is it a supporting part, or is it a lead part or a feature part? And that can change. And one instrument can change its focus as it moves through the mix. So ultimately, though, this for me is a supporting part. Okay, let's solo this acoustic up. I guess if I bring it back to centre to help just make it more comfortable for you to hear. Let's listen to this acoustic guitar raw. Okay, really nicely recorded, not twangy or harsh in any way, but I do feel as though it could do with a little bit of evening it out just before we move on to the EQ. So the way I like to do that is with a bit of tape on acoustic guitar, just to control some of the transient. So that now, if I open that up, bypass, let's bring in the tape. Which is doing a nice evening out job. Next, I like to use multiband compression, because I like to use multiband compression to even out the tonality of a performance. So to my ear, this acoustic feels as though it's quite sort of got a lot of body to it, a lot of warmth to it. And in this mix, there are a lot of electric guitars, and there's quite a kind of full-on busy section at the end with a screaming kind of Neil Young guitar part. At least that's how I hear it anyway, and how I mixed it. So for me, I just feel as though I need to clean up some low mids so that the build up across the mix in that area doesn't get overpowering, because I like the electrics to kind of have that energy in a mix like this. And using a multi-band compressor is a great way to do that, because it does it dynamically. Let's play this and bring it in. So that's done a really great job of evening out that lower mid. It's stopping it being quite so boomy. Not that it was overly boomy, but that's what I heard. And then the upper band here is just tapping away at some of the strums, some of the louder strums, and keeping any transients more level in terms of how they sit in the mix, not poking out quite so much. Now, you could certainly do this with a dynamic EQ if you wanted to, but in this instance, I didn't. What's the next move? Well, now this is where I do go to an EQ, and let's decide what we want to do with it. Let's take another listen, and let's now just check what it sounds like in the mix, because context is everything. And again, I'm going to put this back over to where it was. So let's just check that transition now and see what this acoustic guitar needs. So it's sounding good. It's getting there. It definitely feels like it's sitting in the mix better and not quite so spiky sounding. So I just want to brighten this up for the reason I explained earlier, just so that it balances the guitar that comes in on the right hand side in terms of its loudness perception and its frequency balance with the other guitars. So what we need to decide now is, okay, what frequency? Let's have a listen. Okay, so for me, I'm thinking the low mids have been controlled. I'm thinking that I need to push this forward more in the mids so that it can be heard amongst the electric guitars, which are quite middly sounding instruments in themselves. So choosing a frequency then, how do you go about doing that? So what I suggest you do is just think about the spectrum and break it up into 3 or 4 bands in your head. Think about the subs, so the very low subharmonic frequency being a band. Then think of the lower mids being a band. Then think of the mids up to the upper mids being a band, and then think of the highs. Okay? And you know what? You don't even really need to be clear on what the crossover points are for those bands. So just take your best guess, really. It's an educated guess because you've already kind of decided roughly whereabouts in the frequency spectrum it's going to lie. And just try it. Now, if you're really struggling with this, a tip I can give you is to just focus on those particular bands, to attune your ears to what those bands sound like. And that will help you pinpoint where it is you want to go in and adjust. So with a plugin like Metric AB, it does it automatically for you, and you can set these bands here. But what you're looking at doing is creating like a band pass filter, which is this shape here. And what it does is it's got these different ranges. So you've got sub, bass, low mid, mid, and high. So that's like 5 bands, okay? So the sub is set here. The low is 10 hertz and the high is 60 hertz. So if you're playing through your track, which I guess we can do, I doubt you'll hear that. That's the sub range. But let's say we go to the mids. Or the highs. Or the low mids. Okay, so you get the idea, and you can set this up in an EQ as well with a band pass, and you can choose whatever frequency you want. But take the metric AB frequencies. The sub band goes from 10 hertz to 60. The bass goes from 10 hertz to 250. That's the sub and the bass frequencies together. The low mid is from 250 to 800 hertz. The mids are from 800 hertz to 4K, and the highs are 4K and above. Okay, so with those band splits in mind, that's a way that you can practice really listening through to things and deciding, just training your ears as to what those bands sound like, so that you can then translate that onto the mix or the track that you're listening to decide where you need to go to add more mid or to add more highs or take away some low mids, whatever. So that's just a quick tip there for you for that. So acoustic guitar then with our EQ. And then in the mix. So we can sense the acoustic is there. In fact, if I mute it, you'll definitely hear it's there. So where am I going to go to then to bring that guitar forward a little bit more to match that right-hand guitar? Well, for me, that's going to be in the mids, and I would go for something like 1.5 there. Let's solo this guitar up. No, I'm not being, I'm not going for the exact frequency. I'm just clicking around about that area. Let's solo this guitar and start adding some of that 1.5K. Now, this is the point of this whole video, okay? And that is, how do you know how much to cut or boost? How do you know to get to point B when you don't know where you are at point A? And this is the point. Don't immediately start going in and applying that boost without properly considering the tonal quality of the track that you are applying this EQ to. Okay? You need to give your brain this moment to register and calibrate as to the raw sound or the state of the sound that this track is in right now, and this is your starting point. If you don't have this starting point, then you're just, it's like trying to paint in the dark. It's just not. It's too difficult. How do you know when to stop if you don't know where you started? So let's listen to this acoustic then and start applying some gain to this frequency. And what I suggest you do is just listen for a few seconds, or for a bar, or for 2 bars, whatever you feel you need to do, to just pause and take in the tonal quality of this guitar, okay? And then what I'll do is I'll start to boost this frequency, and then we can talk about where we end up. What I'll do is I'll bring this back to center for this exercise, so it's going to be easier to listen to for you. Okay, hopefully you heard that. Once you give your brain that pause, that moment to acknowledge what the raw sound sounds like, and then start changing that sound in some way, it's easier to hear. You can hear the difference, the before and the after. Now, I appreciate some of you might be saying, well, that is such a broad band, such a broad cue. Of course you're going to hear some change. And that's fine. That's okay. Because we can fine-tune the cue when we start listening to it in context of the mix. The point of this is that, have you found the right frequency or the right frequency area? And 9 times out of 10, you probably have. If you've made that guess as to which band it is you're going to go to change the sound, with a wide cue like that, it covers such a range of frequencies. At some point at some variation of gain on the way up of the Q of the curve, it's gonna do that. It's gonna actually affect a frequency that's gonna make the difference in the mix. What you notice I did was I went up and I went to a point where it felt too much to me, and it wasn't a great deal. I think I just went up to about 3 dBs of boost there, but it went too far and became unnatural sounding, really. Now, the next step here now is to actually listen to this in context of the mix to make this final decision of how much this needs. So I'm going to go back here to the start of that part, and I'm going to zero that out and do it in the context of the mix. And this time I am going to take it back to where it was, 75 to the left, roughly. Let's do this. Okay, now I've ended up going higher than I did listening to it in solo. So that's the whole point of listening to it in context of the mix. Let me help you hear this a little bit clearer if we just solo the guitars. Okay, so if I turn that boost off, let's listen to it in the guitar group. And notice what I'm doing, okay? And you'll notice this in all of my tutorials, I think, is that I do leave a good bar or two before I kind of bring these things in and out, okay? And that's just because how I hear it, how I need to hear it when I'm teaching this stuff. So anyway. Okay, so you could definitely hear that it's brightening up the guitar. The next question is that the right frequency? Can we find a better frequency for it? What I would like to probably do here is narrow this band a little bit because it is quite broad initially. We know what it's given us, what it's told us is that this is the right kind of area for this job, for the intention that I've set. So I'm just going to narrow that down a little bit to about, let's go to about a band of 2 there, roughly. Oops. Okay. Okay, so I think I could find somewhere that's a bit cleaner sounding than that. That will bring the acoustic forward a little bit more. So let's go looking for that. And it's not going to be too far away from where we were already at. Okay, so let's try that out. So that feels clearer to me. Go back to where we were and let me do this in solo this time. So I A-B'd between the 2 boosts there and to help me decide what it is about that sound that I prefer. And I just feel as though this is just bringing a bit more of a cleaner sounding edge to the guitar. So can we do any more to this guitar? Can it handle any more brightness? Let's find out. And so when I say that, what am I thinking of? Well, I'm thinking of maybe something like a 10K boost or an 8K boost, something like that, just to bring a bit more air to the sound. So let's listen to this in the context of the guitar group. And that does a really great job of pulling that guitar forward and bringing it closer to the point of feeling balanced to me, both in terms of frequency and level with the guitar that's happening on the right hand side. Let's listen to this in context of the mix then. Let's see how this feels now, and I'll bypass the entire EQ at some point so you can hear the difference. Okay, so whilst the point of this video isn't really about how to EQ acoustic guitar, hopefully that has given you just some in-context examples of how to apply EQ. The other point I want to make is that when applying the gain to the frequency that you're going to try out, do it smartly, do it reasonably quickly. You saw me apply it there. I didn't dilly-dally and slowly creep up the gain, because your ear that's so much harder for your ear to register that. So you've got to go smartly. And the classic advice of going too far and coming back, that also works. So and helps you hear the frequency that you're actually working with as well. But always just come back, reset, take that gain down to 0, and then smartly add some, 1 dB, 2 dB, 3 dB, whatever of gain in a smart fashion, in a fast fashion. Okay. So let's do a quick recap on this method then. First of all, listen, pause, give your brain a chance to think about how the raw sound sounds and where you feel as though it needs to go in the mix to actually sit in the mix. And if you find it difficult to hear in the mix, just solo it within its instrument group or within a couple of instrument groups to be able to make that decision. Decide what needs to change and try it. Get intentional with it. Pick a frequency. Make your best guess and adjust the gain quickly to be able to hear the change clearly. And with that in place, you can then do some tweaks and try and see if there is a better frequency area, whether a narrower Q is helping, whether it needs to be a broader Q, and whether it needs any additional EQ, another point placing. Now, I've talked about boosting, but this equally applies to cutting. When you listen to the sound raw, and then when you do that first listen, if you feel as though the low mids are too heavy, then go in with a low mid cut. using the same principles that I've just explained. It's so simple and so powerful, this technique, and it stops that cycle of endless tweaking and second guessing, because you've made your decision in the context of the mix or within its instrument group, and you've been intentional. You've actually considered what the track needs, and you've made a good guess about where that frequency lies in order to make that change. Now, to make your final decision, just mute the track. That will help you decide whether you've done enough, and then move on to your next instrument. Chances are, as you keep working through a mix and applying processing to other instruments, then you may need to revisit that instrument that you did some initial EQ on and change some of the things. But that's just mixing. That's part of the course. But I really love this technique, and I wanted to share it with you because I think that whole sweeping thing can just add to confusion to people who don't particularly have the experience to hear any sort of resonances and what have you initially in the mix. So I hope you found this method helpful. If you want to keep learning more about critical listening and about mix analysis, then check out the links. I've got many links in the description underneath this video that will give you access to downloads to help you develop those skills to make better decisions around mixing. Down there you'll find links to free PDF guides and to some mixing courses if you want to learn deeper from me about this kind of listening technique. And let me know in the comments. I'd really like to know if this has actually helped you. If you think, are you one of those people that would endlessly sweep around and get lost in the soup that results from that style of EQing? So I'd really like to know if this technique interests you and if it works. And hey, if nobody's told you lately, you're doing great, okay? You're here, you're open to learning, you're putting the work in, you're practicing, and that is just awesome. So keep mixing, keep learning, and most of all, keep enjoying the process. If you want to learn more about EQing stuff, then check out this link on screen now, which takes you to a playlist full of me basically using this practice across different instruments. So you can really get a better sense of what it is I've been trying to bring across to you today in this video. So that's all from me this week. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.